Made possible through support from ARC Thrift Stores, Developmental Pathways, Dungarvan, and the Arc of Aurora.
A THINK+change training.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Vodpod brought to you from Arc of Aurora and THINK+change. I'm Petrie Brill. I am an individual and systems advocate here at the Arc of Aurora. We are joined today by the very learned Julian. I'm just going to let you take it away, Julian. Let us know who you are, what you do, and how you're connected to our subject today, which is accomplishments in employment as it pertains to people with disabilities.
Yeah, my name is Julian Wang. I'm a self-advocate naturally, but also a person with disability. And I have 3 disabilities. I have a learning disability, ADHD, and leukodystrophy. So that qualifies me very well, apart from being a advocate at the Arc of Lerma County as a peer advocate, but today I'm coming here as myself as a person with a disability.
And a person with a disability who is extremely involved in advocacy and the community. Yeah. Julian haunts the halls of the Capitol when the legislative session is in, working really hard behind the scenes for a lot of great bills and championing all things to help the disability community. So he is out and about in the world and really participating, which we love and appreciate. Okay, so Julian, tell us how employing people with disabilities benefits not only businesses, but society as a whole.
Yeah, it's a holistic view. Yeah. So as I tell people, it's one way it could be getting a person with a disability out in the community, and then also the person that's getting a paycheck or some other monetary ability. There might be a way to make friends. It might be a way to interact with a subject that they like, or it could be something that's just getting them out of the house. So there's so many different ways that can happen.
Yeah. And by getting this community specifically out into the world, how does that then really benefit the businesses themselves?
So a lot of the biggest thing that I see, and I'm of the generation of the people that were the trailblazers, of people that sort of got to be part of the purview of the ADA and all these other rules that we have, 504, things like that, because I was born in 1990. So that sort of, I got to see that like in a different way than somebody that's fought for it.
Right.
And in some places we forget that.
Yeah. That
right now it's a mind shift change. So that person that's front facing, a lot of these businesses are trying to figure out how to integrate with a person with a disability. And a person with a disability is a matter expert in their own way, whatever that is, either a physical disability or is it a mental, or it could be a cognitive. It just depends. So in my world, it's a lot of cognitive, some physical, but that doesn't mean it's physical.
Right.
Because I can walk into this room and be totally fine walking in, but if you saw me on a winter's day, that physical would pop out and I'm slipping and sliding all over snow. So so that's just, we don't know.
Right. So you mentioned that businesses right now are kind of struggling with, how does employing a person with a disability really benefit me? Well, we know there are studies and research that shows that typically people with a disability are absent less.
Yes.
They stay longer, and they are far more reliable. So how would you then respond to those employers by saying, look, hiring a person with a disability actually is an asset?
Yeah. I can sort of share some of my experiences.
That would be great.
So through my time, so before I moved to Colorado, I lived in Kansas City. And during that time, that was high school. So that was very formative years.
Mm-hmm.
So those life skills classrooms or those ACE classrooms or other whatever disability classrooms that you call them in your area, wherever that would be. Those abilities to learn those job skills are so important.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to learn how to just do stuff around the school building by helping in doing janitorial stuff or working at the school store or things like that. Those foundational assets.
Mm-hmm.
We also did this thing called Job Olympics, where we got to try out jobs and compete for jobs, but not like in a monetary compete, like
Right.
earning money, but you're competing for a medal of
Mm-hmm.
gold, silver, bronze.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might end up, if you did really well, that employer could hire you on the spot
Mm-hmm.
or offer you a position. And that's how I got into my job, was through working at a grocery store. It was through that experience of that living life experience of just kicking butt,
Yeah.
and I think we forget that, like, how do we showcase that to
Mm-hmm.
employers? And I always tell people this: where is that ability to see that person? There might be in a structured environment like a job Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a work experience. So it might be those 2 hours that you go with your special education class, and you end up figuring out where you go. Like, it could be at a grocery store, it could be at a food place, it could be some other environment, or it might
Add an
be
art chapter.
Yeah, it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of it's just that experience. So
Yeah, and matching the person's ability with opportunities that are out in the community. Sounds like what you're saying.
Yes. So in that general scheme, I got to be at my grocery store for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was funny. Even while doing not off the cuff, like classroom stuff, like we would do cooking or whatever stuff, we had to always go to the grocery store. Those that worked at the grocery store got asked to sack groceries even without their pay, just for helping him out and got stuff done. And it was funny. There were even times where I would come into work and I would go back to my old grocery store and they're like, "Hey, well, I wish that you could stay." I'm like, "If you pay me good bucks."
Yeah, they missed you. They missed you there.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier, Julian, about how by the time you were born and kind of coming of age, a lot of the trailblazing had already occurred.
Yeah.
But since then, there have been changes. And I'm wondering what you think, what has changed in the past decade for the better for employment with people with disabilities? What have you seen in your time as you've been out in the working world?
So I would say a lot of the change is just that inclusion of option, like DEI premises, or it could be other work opportunities. It could be fellowships. It could be internships. It could be schooling, access to college. It could be so many different ways that there's been a change in that. Because I think before we were like college, like that standard college
Traditional path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's other educational premises here in Colorado, but also around the country.
Yeah. So just more doors opening up to different pathways to employment. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That must be fun to see that occurring and see it even occurring more.
Yeah. But a lot of it is just now figuring out that access to that. And some of it's money, grants, federal grants, stuff like that. And I feel like, let's tie that back to employment. So that standard classroom may have been that first lead to that first job. Some people stick around their whole entire lives and stay at that one job. Or some people are like, "Hey, I'm done. I've done it about a couple years." And then all of a sudden they go and find something else.
Yeah.
I'm of the mindset of when I go and find a job, I go in. I always have to have a backup plan, and that's sort of a hard problem when you sort of are knowing where you want to go or what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so when I came out to Colorado from Kansas City, I got to restart over that dream of what do I want to do? Do I want to work in transportation? Do I want to work in retail? Do I want to work in food service again,
Mm-hmm.
or stuff like that? It's like I would like to work in the transportation field, but that didn't quite work because I needed my driver's license and I had my learner's permit at the time. And sort of out of humor here, it's like I passed the written, but it took me 3 times to pass the driven,
Yeah.
But it's like in those realities, if it wasn't for like DVR or other natural supports in place, that experience never would have happened.
Right.
To be able to learn how to drive.
Yeah.
But even though I drive, I still don't do highways.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That the more opportunities and supports in place, that just creates more opportunity for everyone. So we know in Colorado, it's a very progressive state. We have very progressive policies here. Colorado no longer allows piece rate wages, which is a great thing. Mm-hmm. But what are you seeing on a national level to get rid of, subpar wages for people with disabilities?
A lot of it is that hurdle within states that are following Colorado or other minimum wage states, because a lot of it is there's 2 sides of the story. So one side, it's the advocates that see the light at the tunnel, and then there are people, their parents, caregivers, families, and other people that are like, my child cannot go through a standard employment process. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I don't know, I'm scared because that person doesn't have a caregiver or some other person to provide those other natural supports in that traditional business setting or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. But I've also seen people change their mindset from, piecework to, they're running their own business, like doing artwork or some other thing, or public speaking, or putting a premise on a area that we do not know about, like triathlons or some other like crazy thing, and turning that into a business by using that experience. Like for me, outside my stuff at the ARC, I do public speaking and stuff like that. And it's like sometimes I get paid, sometimes I don't. But I'm still very fun facing, but we all still struggle with something. And I sort of, and in that piecework environment, it's like, oh, where did that start? And I think a lot of that premise is that discovery process. And some people know that. It's like, what is discovery? And like for me, like I'm like, go and figure out what you want to do in that premise. So for me, a lot of that discovery process was passions. And can I work inside or outside?
Yeah.
Or can I work in a noisy environment? Or can I be in a place where I can put on headphones or things like that. But even within that premise of this, like, that environment for people with disabilities, still that's fairly new.
So there are, I'm sure, so many people out there right now with disabilities who are either wanting to jump into employment for the first time, maybe haven't been encouraged, or even are out in the workforce and wanting to advance their careers in some way. You've done all of that. What advice would you give those people who are out there kind of nervous or anxious to get out there and be a part of the workforce?
So I think a lot of it is the journey. So first part is, depending if you're school age, use the skills of your school districts, whatever they have. Your parents or whoever are going to fight for you. Mm-hmm. But you also have to speak up first is that self-advocacy voice that has to come out. I want to do this.
Yeah.
That's so crucial. So I'm going to give it a very example that's not relevant to employment, but can be relevant to employment. So my parents got to talk, like I got to tell them one day how like I was really annoyed with some stuff and like whatever. And it was like, I cannot do this. But I wanted to do something. So that something was travel by myself. On an airplane somewhere around the world. If I wanted to travel, I needed to advocate for that. Yeah. But there's a time and place for my parents to hold on and be helicopter parents. And then there are times where I just need to do it. Mm-hmm. And I sort of had to lay the land of figuring out how does that work? And saying, hey, I need to travel. If I'm going to no longer be with you guys, like, I need to do this. And, like, out of humor now, I do that on a daily basis. And I sort of shock people. Like, they're like, what? You can travel by yourself? But it's that same, like, principle.
Yeah, taking a leap.
Leap of faith.
Right.
In that. And then the other thing is, use your natural supports. So it could be your job coach. It could be your local ARCs. It could be any of your disability organizations around. And just say, hey, I really don't like this job. Can we find another position within my business? Or I'm trying to look for another job. Like, and it's okay to have a ceiling to an extent, depending on the person and what that person feels. But sometimes that person doesn't, they're like, I want to go bigger and grander. Mm-hmm. So
asking what it would take to be able to advance then. Yes. Yeah.
So when I moved to Colorado, the only way that I could get a job was I applied for everything, and then I ended up landing a job at the Home Depot. Through that experience, it was great because that gave me retail experience. I had my time at the grocery store, so that sort of worked out. Mm-hmm. Sort of easy. It was on a bus line, stuff like that, so I could get around until I got my driver's permit. But in that same premise, I was still being part of an advocacy group or being part of the ARC. And if it wasn't for that, I would have still been there today. Mm-hmm. I would be like, well, yeah. There's been days that I've, like, I mean, not to be scared, but I'm tempted about walking out and not be part of that job, come mad at something or there's not enough support. And that's human.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we've all had those days at work, for sure, you know. So if there were a crystal ball sitting on this table right now in front of you, what are your predictions for the future of employment within the disability community? Or what do you want to see next? Either one.
So I'll take that with two different things, but it's also with some lived experience. And the biggest thing is, where are those opportunities for people to shine? Mm-hmm. It either could be projects or things or their work ethic or whatever they're wanting to do. It could be a fellowship. It could be a project. It could be other things. But we have to allow that to happen. So I would like to encourage everybody. So I also am through the National Self-Advocacy Group, Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered. They have a project called SARTAC, Self-Advocacy Technical Resource Center. And they do a fellowship every year for 6 people.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I got my lead into the ARC, to actually get paid and do stuff. And I like that idea of a fellowship or something like that because it gave a person to do something that they, through their discovery of what they want to do, it could be filmmaking, telling a story, or what passion that they're wanting to work on could be done. Mm-hmm. So mine was trying to figure out the barriers of youth and self-advocacy because of like, where are people my age?
Where is everybody?
Because a lot of it is because of those trailblazers that we were talking about. A lot of them are done because they're like, or or dying off. And I don't mean to be that in a sad way. It's just how it is. In that premise, we need to find new advocates because there's still things that we need to still fight for.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I cannot carry that weight. Other self-advocates cannot carry the weight because I know there's days where you're like, I wish I had 20 people writing letters to the government.
Yeah.
But really, it's like, where are they're out there? Just do they know that they have that voice and that opportunity, like that field or a field that they are interested is out there. It's sort of comical sometimes. Like there's days that I look at a job board and I'm like, this sounds so cool, but really, is this what I can do?
Yeah.
And it's like, I could do it. It's just with some adaptation, or is it something that is a field, like being in a field that I can enjoy? So it's just like, I think with being in Disability Employment Month, being October, it's so special that we get that opportunity to showcase that.
Yeah, I think so too.
But we forget that we don't have to just do it in October.
Year round.
Yes.
Julian, I feel like you've really shared so much of your lived experience with us today, which is so precious for people to hear and experience. So I thank you so much for that. Is there anything else you would like to add that I haven't asked you before we sign off today?
I think the more important thing is for individuals, regardless of what happens, we all carry some kind of baggage. It could be something, not having enough friends or not enough stuff that goes on, or we want to be part of something. Like, this is sort of funny because over the years I've learned that I need a holistic view of friends and people and community. But people with disabilities don't realize that. Like, you need to go and find people, because I can call up 5 or 6 friends now that I can ask a question. Hey, can you help me out with this? And we're still struggling. Like, we still struggle to figure out that problem, but it's better than just the one like just me figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing with employment. We all need a holistic view. In that crystal ball view, where does that all integrate? And that's the hardest part, because some employers do a great job of that, some don't, because they don't know how that all integrates. So let's say my services does not always work, and it's not because my interests are there. It's just because there's a dollar amount. We need to get past that view of a dollar amount of what is holistic. So if I need help, right, I can tell you right now that my apartment's a hot mess, but still, like, it's not because I cannot do it. It's just because I can. It's just the need of that executive functioning or other things like that, and seeing past that, like it's sort of funny, like when we were talking, like you had reached out, I'm like, hey, how are you? Like, you had all forgotten that I was up in Fort Collins. I'm like, yeah, but I could get there. Let's just figure it out.
Yeah.
But it, like, and it's sort of amazing, because I sort of, I like to surprise people. Like, sometimes I've bumped into some of you all at like a Wings for All event or some other thing, and they're like, how did you get down here? I'm like, either I got a ride or I did it by myself through public transportation or something like that. And it's just like, in that same perspective, if you allow somebody to try something, like for that first try would be either getting on a public bus or getting that try to go to a sport thing, like maybe being engaged with that, or in that reality, build a circles of support group, or some other premise. We need to, and it's sort of funny. I was talking to my Lyft driver about this. We're just like talking about what that's like, and he's like, "That's just crazy, like this is so cannot be billed.
Yeah.
And it's like, it should be. Like, but some people don't want to make money because of it. It's like, because they don't want to lose that friendship. But sometimes you sort of do need somebody outside the service community to just be that friend.
Absolutely.
And take on some of that extra cost. It could be driving, or it could be covering costs for a meal, or that ball game ticket, or whatever it is, that friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So
just a network of people who see the ability as opposed to the disability,
yes.
which I think is what you're saying. Well, you certainly have helped us move the conversation around disability employment forward today, Julian. I really appreciate you being here with us. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to join us here today and educate people at large on what it's like out there. So thank you so much for being with us today. And thank all of you for joining us. There is one more yet to come this year, so stay tuned. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.